everyone. My name is Ryanne Fisher, and this is the Born to be a Scout podcast. This podcast explores how impactful the scouting movement is on our future lives and on all of those around us. Join me as we talk to some amazing leaders on how scouting has led them to their successes in life. The gist of this podcast is a sit down with great leaders that have been impacted by the scouting movement and how they have learned to lead through their love of scouting, even beyond fun campouts. A shout out goes to Alex Boyer for giving me permission to use the song Born to be a Scout in my podcast and marketing. You can add to his over 1 billion views on his YouTube channel or find out more about his great service work at alexboyer.com. That's ALEXBOYE.com. Now join us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts as we have great conversations with people who are just born to be a scout. I'm excited to start off this new series with someone who is well versed in the benefits of scouting, whether in a tent, in the office, or even in an airplane. Today, Brad Tilden joins me to discuss how scouting has impacted his every move since he joined Cub Scouts in Alabama. For those of you that have not yet met Mr. Tilden, he is a past president and CEO of Alaska Air Group. Yes, like the airline some of us use to travel the world, and currently volunteers as the National Boy Scouts of America chair. With over 50 years of involvement with the Boy Scouts of America and being a distinguished Eagle Scout, there is no doubt that Brad Tilden was born to be a Scout. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Brad Tilden. Welcome to Born to be a Scout.
Ryan, thank you very, very much for having me. That's an extremely gracious introduction. I wish my parents were still around to hear it. You did a good job. And please call me Brad. Mr. Tilden is my dad, and he's no longer with us, but call me Brad, please.
Okay. Thank you for joining me today, Brad. I am so excited to talk to you today.
I'm happy to be here. You and I've met a couple times, and I'm really looking forward to having fun with you and continuing our conversation.
For sure. Now, I have to start off with the most serious question out there. I'm sure that everybody, like me, is dying to know, did you earn your aviation merit badge while you were a youth?
No, I wish I had. You know what? It's a great question because it gives me a chance to talk about something else, but I loved flying. I remember being a little kid going to the airport in Huntsville, Alabama, and seeing a brand new 727 and just being taken with it. I had there been any adults in my life that were pilots or around aviation, I'm pretty sure I would have spent my career as a professional pilot because I really, really love flying. But there weren't. My dad was an engineer, and my brother was an accountant. So I sort of followed my brother's footsteps in school. I ended up with a good job when I was 18 or 19, and I had enough money to start to take some flying lessons. But so I got into it young, but not quite young enough to get aviation merit badge or to pursue a career in aviation.
Well, I'm very proud to say that I got the great opportunity of flying a plane once in order to get the aviation merit badge with my advisor for the World Scout Jamboree in 2019. So I think
Nice.
it's official that I might have a one-up on you.
You're up already. And I'm guessing there's 100 other places that you're up on me, but good for you.
Well, speaking of your youth in the Boy Scouts of America, how did your start in the BSA look like? What memories do you think you pull from the most now that you've grown up a bit from those Cub Scout days in Alabama?
Yeah. You know, scouting was super important to my parents. And I'll tell you a little bit of background. My dad was one of the last people in North America to get polio, and he and my mom were in Saskatchewan, Canada, and it really hit his legs hard. He had no muscle at all in his right leg and only really limited use of his left leg. And so Canada's got really brutal winters, and so they said, "Look, we can't make it here with this polio in the winter." So they moved around. They moved south to warm up in better climates, and first Oklahoma, then Texas, where I was born. And he got on with Boeing in Alabama. But scouting he couldn't obviously do the 50 milers and things like that. But other than that, it was a fantastic way for him to interact with his kids and sort of share with us what he thought was important in life. And so our family has 6 kids, 4 boys, 2 girls, and all 4 boys went through the program. They all made it all the way through. But that's how we got in. It was, but I'll also say there was no pushing at all. I remember my brothers packing trunks because that's what you did 50 years ago to go to summer camp. And I just remember sort of jumping out of my skin. I wanted to go to camp so bad and, build fires and cut wood and swim in the lake and do all those things. So when my day came, I was definitely ready for it, and I just loved everything about the program. You see, I'm smiling from ear to ear now. It's some of the best memories of my life are doing those things as a young person.
So, was your first job working for Boy Scout camp?
It was early. I did a bunch of jobs. I worked at Arby's. I was a paper boy, but I did work 4 summers of high school, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th grade at Camp Brinkley in Washington State. It was in Monroe, Washington, and it was a fantastic job. And like a lot of things, like a lot of things in life, you really learn it once you start to teach it, right?
Yes.
And so I taught cooking and pioneering merit badge the first year, and archery range and stuff like that as the years moved on. But no, it was just fantastic.
So, some could say you got your start at a Boy Scout summer camp.
Sure, absolutely. I'll go with that.
Now, you really talked about the importance of how family impacted your time at Scouts when you were a youth. How do you think about this family culture that we have in the Boy Scouts Americas? I know that's one of my favorite parts. My grandfather, my brother, my father,
Yeah.
even my mom will join me on campouts. How do you think that really develops the culture of the scouting movement?
I think it's fantastic. It's a way for, honestly, what scouting, we get young people outside on the trail at summer camps, 50 milers, things like that. And that's the fun part of it. That's sort of the reward. But at the same time, we're learning the scout oath and scout law, and you're learning about resilience and things like that. You're learning things that are very, very useful life skills. But it's a great way for families to sort of pass on what's important, family values. You can actually, rather than grandpa sitting around telling the 5-year-old grandkid what to focus on, you say, hey, why don't you sign up for Cub Scouts? So I think it's great. I think it. I mean, I also see the other side of that, which is that we are really fantastic sort of telling our story inside the scouting family. And we're not as good as we need to be at telling our story outside the scouting family and bringing in a family that didn't have a scouting tradition saying, hey, would you be a den leader, a cub master, a scout master, assistant scout master? And that's something I think as we talk to people, we really, we got to be careful that we use language that's really inviting because honestly, this program is so fantastic, and our country would be so much better off if a bunch more people were scouts, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't want it to be a secret that's just inside the family. This is like the greatest thing we've got, and I think we sort of need to be shouting it from the rooftops. But anyway, I hope that answers your question.
So, do you think it's important that our leaders of the future have this resilience, this grit that you're speaking of? And how do you think that scouting kind of grows this in young people?
Well, first of all, it's important. So many of the things that scouting teaches are important for future leaders. If you look at our world today, there's people are a lot more interested in not getting along and not seeing another person's perspective than in getting along and seeing the other person's perspective. And I just think if we had more people that sort of live the scout oath and scout law, whose basic orientation was how can I help other people and what does it mean to be kind to this person or cheerful or helpful, I just think we'd be so much better off. And it doesn't mean you compromise any values. It's just means that's your approach to life. You're specifically asking about sort of resilience, and I also think that's really important. If you look at, if I don't know, you have probably a much more valid perspective than me, but as a parent and as a grandfather now, I look at young people, and it's harder. Life was far more simple 55 years ago, or whenever I was a Cub Scout. There was you could do little league or scouts or something else, be a paper boy, and play outside. Those were sort of that was the options, and there was no internet or video games or social media or cyberbullying or any of that sort of stuff. We were just a bunch of happy kids, and I was in Huntsville, Alabama, running around in bare feet all day, every day. And it's harder today, and I think it manifests itself with kids that you know, ADD or ADHD or whatever, depression, whatever it might be. And I really think Scouts helps with that stuff. I think we just the whole there's a lot of magic to the program. I think we get young people out, we start having fun, but then once you're doing that, we say, hey, well, let's advance from a tenderfoot to a second class, and second class to first class, and first class to star, and along the way, you do a service project, and you actually feel the rewards of doing something good for other people, and the advancement is sort of good. You learn to I mean, it's hard for adults to lead other adults. It's really hard for kids to lead other kids, and you get to try being a patrol leader as a 12 or a 13-year old, and then a senior patrol leader. And it's what I'm saying is you learn a lot, and you're so busy doing those things that you don't have time to as much time to lay on the couch and look at social media or whatever. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but these are points I sort of want to make. On the resilience question, a good friend of mine in Seattle, like he was the first person to use this language, but I knew immediately what he meant. He said, the scouting program, in my opinion, is a program of failure. And it's like, okay, that's true. We do. We tell 11-year-olds, let's go camping, and give them a little bit of advice on how to set up a tent or how to prepare their meal, but not a lot. And they mess it up, It's but they get tougher through that. You were asking earlier if I had examples of that, and I do remember vividly a 50 miler that we were hiking along the west coast of Washington,
Oh my.
and the scoutmaster said, "Hey, there's weather coming in tonight. Make sure you set up your tent properly." And back in those days, tents didn't have floors, and so like it wasn't this cush camping that you do, Ryan. So everyone brought a shovel and you dig a little trench on each side of the tent, so if it rained, the water would run down the channels. And of course, I didn't do that, and I know, and, and it just rained like it just poured buckets and buckets and buckets. And by honestly 11 or 12 o'clock, I was sleeping inside a sponge, and I was miserable. And you're swearing. I'm never, when this thing ends, I'm never ever doing another Boy Scout event in my life. I'm never going camping again. And the night goes on. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and you don't sleep a wink. But you wake up, and the sun comes out, and you warm up, and you dry out your sleeping bag, and by that afternoon, it was like you're tired, of course, but you're like, it wasn't that bad. We got through it, and then by the weekend, you're like, I got through that. You're
Yeah.
sort of proud of yourself, and what's happening is you are building up resilience. You're building yourself up to deal with challenges in life. I know I'm talking a long time, but I remember another 50 miler that I came home. I didn't put on mosquito repellent the way I should have, and I was sat in the tub and I started counting mosquito bites, and I had like 50 on one leg, and I
I've been there.
started
Yeah.
getting up, and it's it makes you tougher, and tougher is something that with the world the way it is today, kids are going to be challenged. People are going to put them down. People are going to tell them they don't have what it takes to get through it. And this sort of toughness that scouting, these experiences, these failures in a safe environment, these the experiences we give young people, they're good for them. And so, anyway, I know I'm talking for a
No,
long time,
I
but
think
I really
yeah.
think it's a great thing about the program. And I know as I'm out talking about scouting, I'm going to tell those stories more, because I think to a young mom who's wondering what to do with her kids, it's like I would want that if I was a young parent.
I think you really hit on there at the end. It's the safe place we've made in
Yeah.
scouting. In fact, in NYLT Leadership Academy, which is a training we offer within the Boy Scouts of America, we have a thing called special place, which is this idea that everybody has a different understanding of what is safe, and we
Yeah.
all can come together and understand each other and learn from each other and kind of be okay with the idea that we might make mistakes, but we all are here for each other to grow each other and
Yeah.
understand where we are. And in
Neat.
venturing, we have personal growth. And it's the idea of, maybe for you, rock climbing is something that's very easy, but for me, that's
Yeah.
terrifying. And scouting is a safe place that we can and cheer on our friends when they get onto
Totally.
the rock wall for one
Yeah.
person, because that's a big accomplishment. But the next person getting to the top might be their accomplishment. And I really
Totally.
like how scouting does that.
That's really neat. Where did you do NYLT?
I took MLT at my home council in Washington
Okay.
Crossing Council, but since I absolutely love that program. In fact, it kind of helped me pick what I want to go into in life. But I've helped courses in Connecticut and New York. I even got the opportunity to go to Germany this summer to help with their
Yeah.
MLT course. So MLT is something I very much love. There's
Yeah.
also a great course called Leadership Academy, which you get to expand those skills even more. And I love the idea of getting to present yourself and learn again how to do this all safely with the idea
Totally.
of failure not being the end of the world.
Totally. I don't think I got to do NYLT as a kid, but I've sat in on a couple of sessions or workshops as an adult, and it does seem like a really fantastic program.
It's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Now, and now let's expand this idea of being able to have failure safely. Have you seen this in your work life? And I know you ended up being in charge of a large organization. Did you try to instill that culture at
Yeah,
Alaska Airlines?
for sure. And I think you probably learn more from your mistakes than the things you do well. But I think a lot of corporate leaders do. Like the people are trying to push a culture now is like, hey, we have to make mistakes. We have to take risks. We have to sort of break it before our competitors break it. And we have to sort of be reinventing and re-energizing all of the time. So yeah, I did try to instill that culture. Yeah, what you want to say to folks is, look, if let whatever we you've heard a lot of times, the best thing is the right decision, the second best thing is the wrong decision, and the third best thing is no decision. So let's get to one or two quickly and figure out whether it was the right one or the wrong one, and and then make an adjustment. And we at Alaska we tried to talk a lot about, is it you don't want to take that approach with safety of flight. It's like you want to make sure the airplane is completely safe to fly, the pilots are completely trained, you want to make sure you're completely ready. But if it's a new marketing program, you can. It's like, what if you discover something really fantastic that customers really, really love because you took a chance? And if it didn't go, let it let it float away and go try something else. And it's just people call it analysis paralysis. If you don't do that. So yeah, we did, and I think we had a lot of success at Alaska. I mean, one of the funnest things at an airline like ours is growing, and Alaska grew, and it still is, but the industry grows at about 1% a year, but Alaska grew at more like 7% a year for 25 years, and the compounding of that is it's fantastic. But with regions and markets, hey, let's put a flight in there. Let's see if it works. We're doing 3 a day. Let's try 4 a day. We're flying it with a 76 seat jet. Let's try it with a 124 seat jet or a 737 800 or 900. If you create a culture, just try it. We'll make adjustments, and there are big decisions, because you commit for a schedule period, and you can lose millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But the culture of trying things will make you a lot of money, and just tweaking, and everything's in work all the time, trying to tweak it and make it better. If you create a culture of fear and don't try it, then that will cost you your company sooner or later. So anyway, that's some
I'm
of the things
glad
we
you're
did.
able to develop that culture then.
Yeah, we tried. There's lots of things like in any cult. I'm careful to. I mean, I'm really, really proud of Alaska and my time there, and we did so many fun things. But you got to be careful about reading your news, your own news clippings too much. In any organization, there's things that are going well and things that could go better. And I always focus on the things that could go better and trying to make them. I think it's a good place to have your orientation.
I think that's very good advice. Speaking of advice, now I'm a new to the work person, and you've been in the work world for a while. What advice do you have for scouts and young people like me that are trying to catch our footing? You gave the advice of take some risks, but how do we do that as a new person
Yeah,
in the workplace?
yeah. Well, the first thing I'd say, Ryan, is and honestly, people like you and scouts, you just are at a huge. I would be. Don't ever be arrogant, but be confident. You've done a lot already. Your spirit is nice and warm. You want to see other people succeed. I mean, don't ever lose that. That's employers are just craving that. They want what you have so badly, and so I would not freak out about your career and your future and all that. It's you have like it took me like early in my career to ask you, you're like I came out through the finance arm, but hey, does this person, are they a good accountant? Do they have the exact experience? And you're sort of overly focused on that. But by the end of your career, is this a good person? Is this a person I trust to make decisions about people, about leadership? Is this a person I want to hang around with, almost 24/7 in the work environment? So the first thing I'd say is you are on a great track already, and people like you. Just be confident. The second thing I would say, and I've most people do ask this question, and I tell almost all people that are earlier in their career, is that you can probably take a lot more risk in the workplace than you think. If your heart is in the right place, if you're trying to make your company better, and you need to voice that, you need to say that. But if you say, look, I'm seeing that we're doing this and it drives me crazy. I want our company to be the very best version of itself that it can be. Why don't we change? Why don't we change the system to do this, or start offering our customers this, or do this module on the first day of training instead of who knows what the issue is, but make suggestions. And people are human nature is people don't always say. Sometimes they'll say, "Oh, that's a great idea. Let's do it." A lot of times human nature, they won't say that, because they don't, you're challenging the person that designed the program or whatever, but they will think about it. And a lot of times things will change. And I think you can sort of, as an employee or as a young person in the workplace, you can live more on the edge than you think if you're pushing for something good. And you got to be aware that you might be wrong. You might, like we talked about, you might be pushing for an idea that's not going to work. It's idea number two, and so you need to have that humility. But it's good to push. I mean, when I was sort of building teams in Alaska, I always wanted people that would push, even if they were wrong, because you can do a lot more with that momentum than with people that just sort of don't have the drive, don't or people that are happy with the status quo. You can't. It's hard to fire that person up to get them to do something. Someone that wants to push, wants to do something, even if they make a mistake, you can sort of redirect them.
For sure. I think that's one of the great things, one of many great things in scouting, but we don't really always get to build our teams, which allows for you to learn as a leader how to work
Yeah,
with different personalities. You don't get, quote, the best. But I think that's where we often go wrong is when we get to pick the team, we end up not realizing that everybody has a really great quality in them. And that by learning to work with different great qualities, you can kind of see what works well, what doesn't work well. And I'm glad that I feel like I can imply that advice you just gave to even right now me running teams and scouting, but hopefully then again in my career future.
yeah. Are you saying you learned more in scouting because you didn't pick all people that were easiest to work with, or
I think
what
there's
exactly?
yeah, like ultimately when you're a 12-year-old and you get put into a patrol, you don't
Yeah,
pick the other 12-year-olds you're with, and that means you aren't being put with your best friends, which especially when you're 12, you only want to go talk to your best friends.
yeah,
So by being able to be forced to meet new people and
totally.
learn from new people, you have that ability
Yeah,
to find these challenging
yeah. I
personalities.
understand you now, and I
Yeah,
totally agree with you. It's. I think there's nothing. I never encountered anything in Alaska that was as hard as trying to get 12 or 13-year-olds to set up camp and make dinner. That was hard.
yeah, and I think the best part is that you learn that annoying person that you didn't know yet. Like once you get to
Totally.
talk to them over a weekend of camping, they're not as quote annoying as you once
Yeah,
thought. They're
yeah.
a really interesting
Or
person, and maybe they just are challenging you in a way that you're not yet used to.
yeah, or maybe they're insecure and acting out a little bit because of that, and you help deal with the underlying issue, or maybe they got something going on at home, and you end up with more sympathy for what they're going through. But you learn early that whatever, almost everyone out there is trying their best. They're dealing with different things that you're dealing with, but almost everyone is trying their best to sort of hold it together and get things and move through life.
Do your best. Love it.
Do your best. Yeah,
Now, you're still very active in scouting as the national chairman. How
yeah.
have you been able to apply maybe some of your business knowledge to scouting or even some of your scouting knowledge to how the BSA runs as a business?
Yeah. No, like honestly, so at Alaska there was a few themes that we had, but one there's a great book by a guy named Jim Collins uh, called Good to Great that we really used at Alaska. He went through a bunch of businesses that had made it. They had an inflection point, and they went from being a good business to a great business. But one of the things he said is first who, then where, and so he spent a lot of energy like let's build a really really good team of people, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Another thing that we really sort of believed at Alaska is that there's a template you can apply to almost any business, and that is sort of look at the environment that the business or the scout unit or whatever is operating in, then come up with a strategy that's responsive to that environment, competitors, whatever it might be, and then develop sort of rhythms and systems and so forth for executing your plan. And once you have the plan, avoid, people love to make plans and avoid going back and questioning the plan. Do that once a year for just spend a lot of, we call it hammering, just once you have the plan, hammer away at trying to achieve those goals. And so we are a couple of applications at the scouting, as you probably know, we just hired a new CEO for the movement. We got a terrific guy, a guy named Roger Crone. He's got experience running a company called Leidos. It's a Fortune 250 company. He's an Eagle Scout. I think he's got great business experience, and I think he'll bring a lot of those qualities to scouting, but also with the knowledge of our programs. And then the second thing is like, where are we going? Uh, Scouting has almost 500,000 adult leaders that are involved moving us forward, but we'll just do better if we're all rowing the boat in the same direction. So we've developed something called a roadmap. It's got 5 principles, and the first one is become the nation's leader in youth safety. The second one is change the way we work together. That's really saying national and local councils work better together. The third one is make our programs highly relevant to today's youth. The fourth one is broaden our appeal and strengthen our brand. That's really trying to help us grow outside of our traditional scouting families. And the fifth one is to make ourselves financially sustainable. And that's just things that we need to work on coming out of our bankruptcy. But so like that's sort of from the business world. That's the roadmap. And your dad probably knows that we spent a lot of time sort of communicating this roadmap to service territories, the NOLC, scout executives, all throughout. And then pretty soon, there's going to be goals and objectives under that roadmap, and it's hammer time. And we just start working on achieving those goals and objectives. So, I really I really believe in that. And honestly, it's kind of the scouting method. You don't spend a lot of time debating what the requirements for the star rank are. You just, and you might wish they were different, and you might be right that they should be different, but no, you get to work on them. And so that's what we're going to try to do with the scouts.
And even beyond that, that's exactly what you guys teach in our training, National Youth Leadership Training. You teach us to set a vision, think about your
Yeah,
team, a team
yeah,
vision, create goals, work towards those
yeah,
objectives,
yeah,
communicate it. So I'm really glad that you're working to make sure that you communicate, one, your vision, but two, you're really
yeah,
showing that you
yeah,
do believe what you're teaching all of the youth.
yeah, yeah. Thanks.
Did you want to touch back on that book? I'm very interested. I did read that book myself. What was your biggest takeaway from Good to Great?
I like looking at those success stories and trying to like what did change the trajectory of that business. But I remember he had something called a hedgehog concept, and different people have used different language about that. But it's basically the idea of figure out what you're really good at and put all your resources into that, and what you're not really good at, don't worry about it a lot. Hire someone else to do it, but put your assets, your investment, your time into the things that are really good for you. The first who then where is really a shout to focusing on people. Um, those are a couple things that I remember. I mean, I think my biggest takeaway, Ryanne, from it, and what I really tried to do at Alaska was really get people aligned around a plan. Another fantastic book is Boys in the Boat, and I actually haven't seen the movie yet. I've read the book, But they talk in that book about there's 8 people rowing in these crew races, and they compete in the 1936 Olympics, and they win gold for the United States. But they talk about something called swing when like what rowers don't know how hard each other's working, so you can slack if you want to, but if you respect the other people in the boat, and if you pull your fair share, the boat actually lifts out of the water, and they call it the friction decreases, and they call it swing. It gets you get in this mode where it gets really really easy, and I think that's true in organizations. Like when people are totally aligned around the same thing, and they're not questioning and poking and still arguing about the destination. When they say, let's just go do it, I think our scouting boat can lift out of the water and say, let's just go change more lives for more kids. So that's and I'm not sure. Like I think there's examples of us doing great at that at Alaska, and there's examples of places we could have done it better. But I did love that story, and I do really believe that in airlines, for example, there's all kinds of algebra, there's all kinds of systems and technology. There's a lot of things you can spend your time on, but the place to spend your time is with the people. And if it's at the end of the day, it actually is, despite all that technology, it's a people business. And if we can give people great experiences on our flights, they'll come back. And if they come back, we'll be successful. So anyway, that's a focus area that I really like, and I think we train scouts to do that. But anyway, that's a thought for you.
No, I love it for sure. All right. Our last question in this section is not to get too personal, but what is something that you are currently, quote, failing at that you might need to relook with this scouting safe to fail point of view?
That's a good question. It's I think, and I think, yeah. I mean, this is a podcast, and so it's going to go out there. So I'll sort of give you the G version of it. But honestly, in my life, I spent a lot of time on my career. It was in my family sort of paid a bit of a price for it. And it was, I felt really blessed. They were the best 31 years of my career years, but it was sort of jobs like that. You're sort of, I mean, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but my view at the time, and my view still is that you just have to be on all the time. You can't, if an employee contacts you, you can't not respond. You can't be that person that doesn't reply to emails, doesn't has the appearance of not caring, etc. So, I mean, something I'm really trying to adjust now is sort of my mix of family time. I'm a granddad now. We got 4 grandkids. We have 3 daughters. I told you earlier we got a dog. I'm trying to do a better job of just sort of a lifetime balance. I didn't have a good balance sort of for me from age 30 to age 60, but I'm trying to get things back in balance now.
All right, I'll keep that one in mind for my own personal life. And now I know I can reach out to you if I'm finding any struggle myself.
Totally, totally.
All right, so my next section is going to be called Lead Your Adventure. For those of you that do know me, one of my favorite mottos within the Boy Scouts of America comes from the co-ed older youth program called Venturing. The motto is Lead the Adventure. And to me, this sticks out as Lead Your Adventure because I think
Yeah,
everyone, especially scouts, learn through trial and error how to lead their own adventure.
yeah.
What do you think was the turning point for you that really showed you that you are leading your own adventure?
It's a great question. Are you specifically thinking career wise or fun wise, or I can probably find examples in a few different
Your
parts of
life.
life.
Like, whatever you define as your adventure. It might be a little bit of mixture of both, and you said
Yeah.
recently, now you're trying to make it for sure a work-life balance. How do you lead that adventure?
Yeah. Well, here's a fun example. There's a lot of career examples, and I would go back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago of like I can think of examples career wise where I took a couple risks, and like no one in the room was saying, "Hey, good job, Brad, for speaking up." But I think my leaders were quietly saying, "Hey, this guy might be, he might be the one to succeed me." And I think some of that's deciding that you're going to find your voice and speak up in the workplace, I think will pay dividends for people. But here's a more fun personal example. So when I retired, I am a pilot. I love to fly. We built a little. It's called Builder Assist. The factory built a lot of it, but we built a little Piper Cub. It's called a Carbon Cub. It's a 2-seat airplane, front back. It's a tail dragger. It's got big tires in the front, so you can land it on cow pastures and riverbeds and really, really fun places like that. But Build Your Adventure, I just sort of said, hey, we could have a lot of fun. My wife and I both love the outdoors. We love, going to places that haven't been before. So we built this airplane, and now we can fly it to places like Johnson Creek, Idaho, or Pistol Creek, the Middle Fork of the Salmon River, and none of these places has a paved runway. If Johnson Creek, as an example, has really, really great grass, but most of them are dirt strips or gravel strips or sort of weeds or something like that. But you go and you're going places in an airplane that people haven't gone before, and you camp under the wing of the airplane, or you pitch a tent and make spaghetti by the fire. And anyway, that's just a great. There's a place here in Oregon. We're in Bend, Oregon right now. There's a place called Chucker Flats that we go to for day trips. But it's a great thing that not a lot of people do, but it is fun, and it creates those experiences and those memories.
That definitely sounds like you found a way to lead your own adventure. That's a perfect
Yeah.
answer. All right. Now I got some quick fire round questions to try to, quickly put out whatever comes to your
Yeah.
mind first. What does being a scout mean to you?
I know I'm not going to be as quick as you probably want me, but as a kid, it meant doing fun things. As an adult, it means leading in line with just trying to live your life in line with the Scout Oath and Scout Law.
That's a perfect answer right there.
Thank you.
Speaking of the Scout Oath and Law, how has it helped you lead yourself and the business world?
It's been huge. I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, but early in my career, I even for me, it was like, can I understand the way an airline ticket is priced, or airline ticket taxes, or the way we might do payroll for flight attendants or pilots or something like that? This stuff is complicated. But as you move on in life, it's more about people, leaders, characteristics, people that you trust to lead important parts of your organization. So it's been really, really, really important.
Good. All right. The next question is, who is a scout or scouter that you look up to right now?
There's a bunch. To be honest, I work with a bunch of them on the, and I'm worried about naming names in a scenario like this for people that you could forget. But as an example, our scout executives around the country, we've got roughly 250 local councils. I would bet that a bunch, well over half, are led by people that were scouts as kids, and they are I mean, they are paid, but they chose a life in a nonprofit organization where the compensation isn't what it would be outside, and they're really giving their lives to grow this program for young people. And so that would be one group. If you looked on the national board, I mean, it's we're trying to get more women on the board, and they, if they're older, they didn't have a chance to come through the program. But of the men, a lot are Eagle Scouts, and so, and you just find that I don't know, you just find that you have a comfort level with them. You've all got the same code that you're at least trying to live your life by. So anyway, there's a bunch of them. I'm sorry, I don't feel like it's smart to name names, because I could give you 5 names and leave 45 off, or 145 off, and I don't think I should do that.
I think everybody is great. So it's
Yeah,
definitely a hard question. Now, you are a distinguished Eagle Scout. What was your Eagle Scout project, and what was your biggest takeaway from your trail that you
yeah.
did?
So so I built. We have a. I lived in Normandy Park, Washington, as a kid, and there was a duck pond and had a little creek running out of it, and it was just, I think, almost like a spillway, and you could just sort of jump across. But I built a bridge for it, and to go across. And my dad was a Boeing engineer. He wasn't in airplanes, by the way. He was in the space and defense program. But like he he was like, you could have just gone to the lumber yard and poured a footing and put a
No.
couple things up, but he made me run the stress and the weight calculations, and it had an arch to it, and it was the shape of a parabola, and I had to do the calculations at every 6 inch interval for the parabola to cut this the two trusses or whatever we called them, to cut the arc, and then we put 2x6s and railing on it. Poured, but it was a hard, for me at that age. It was a hard project. It was a bunch of Saturdays, and I learned a lot, but I don't know. It stood. It's not there anymore, but it stood for 25 or 30 years, and
Oh,
I know my mom went down there all the time and fed the ducks, and we had great memories of it. And the point is, you challenge. Hopefully, you're doing something good and challenging yourself, and realizing you can set a hard goal and get through it.
I love it. I love the mom support too.
Yeah,
All right. My last question in this section is there something that you'd like to know from my perspective as somebody still benefiting as a quote youth in the program?
yeah. What I do, like what I my two questions would be, what have you loved the most about your scouting experience, and what do you think we should do to make to help this program come alive for even more people, for those non-traditional scouting families? Those would be my two questions, Ryan.
I think the biggest thing I took away is that you really do get to, and I hate to lean into it, but lead your own adventure. I
Yep.
know when I started, being somebody who is from the scouting family and like seeing all these accomplished people, it gets very scary because my grandfather's also a distinguished Eagle Scout. My brother's an Eagle
Yep.
Scout. He's done so many cool things. You got to go to Japan through scouting and all these things. I was so nervous that I would never be able to live up to do the things
Yeah.
they wanted to do,
Yeah.
that for a while it felt like I was trying to relive their adventure. And I think
Right.
that's exactly the great part about scouting is I met so many different people. I had different experiences. I learned how to be my own person. So I think the
Neat.
best thing is that I got to choose what I wanted to do. There's so
Neat.
much scouting.
Yep.
And I think that leads into the next one is really highlighting the fact that there is so much more to scouting than I think what gets stereotyped about scouting. Like in
Yeah.
TVs and movie shows, you see, oh, the Boy Scout of the show. But
Yeah.
Boy Scouts isn't just camping and hiking. It's learning how to be a good leader. It's learning how
Yeah.
to present better. It's going whitewater rafting or just watching a movie with your friends. It can be
Yeah.
whatever you want it to be. And
Yeah.
I think we really need to put more ideas on this great concept of lead your own adventure because it's
Yeah.
not going to be the same thing as everybody else's adventure.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, I from you're doing a fantastic job leading your own adventure. You have so much going on for a young person, and I just think it's going to be really fun to check back with you in 10, 20, 30 years and see all the great things that you've done.
Our last question for this podcast is, and you chose the motto you want to do at the beginning, but how do you live by the Cub Scout motto daily of do your best?
Yeah. To be honest, let's just talk about this for half a second. I, like the Boy Scout, do a good turn daily and be prepared. Those are sort of part of my psyche. I remember it. You showed me these things, and I had forgot that the Cub Scout motto was "Do your best." But when I saw it, I liked it immediately. I don't know. Like I think in life, people get too caught up. Like, did I win? Did I lose? Yada yada yada. Like sometimes whether you won or lost is a function of the people the group that you're in that moment, or what did the referee actually, what call did they make? When you made that play or whatever it might be. But I just think if you go out there and do your best, you can. The main thing you can do is sleep well that night. And if you can sleep well that night, you get a good night's sleep, and you start up and do the same thing tomorrow. And I basically think the other thing that sort of is implied in that is the person you're trying to impress is yourself. Don't worry about the boss or whether you won the game or lost the game. But did you ideally your own standards are higher. Your own standards for yourself are higher than other people's standards for you. But and if that's your setup, go do your best against those standards, and then forget about it. Go to sleep, relax, take the dog for a walk, do your whatever it is, and then come at it again the next day. And the other thing implied in that is you're not always going to be your best. It's like People say, like, I live by the Scout Oath and Scout Law. Nobody lives by the Scout Oath and Scout Law all the time. We're humans. We make mistakes. We get jealous or petty or whatever. You try to live by the Scout Oath and Scout Law, and so the other thing I like about do your best is you try, but you're not always going to be successful in doing your best. Anyways, I really like that one, Ryanne. I think it speaks to a good way to lead your life that'll A, make you successful, and B, make you happy and content.
It's even in the motto. On my honor,
Yeah.
I will do my best.
Do my best. That's right.
I will try.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for coming to join me here at this podcast, Born to be a Scout. I think it's very clear at the end of this that you were definitely born to be a Scout, and you've learned so much that I don't even think I got half the wisdom that you have out during this time. But I really appreciate you joining me here today.
Thanks, Ryan. One thing I can tell you is you are far ahead of where I was when I was, what are you, 20?
I'm 20, yes.
Yeah, you're far ahead of where I was when I was 20 years old. So you are, I've tried to share with you what I know, but you're going to turn things upside down. And as I just said, I really look forward to watching this. And I look forward to, good for you for getting this series of podcasts going. I really look forward to seeing what you come up with, who else you interview. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
This has been the Born to be a Scout podcast. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. To catch us on all of our future episodes and posts, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Born to be a Scout Podcast, or look out for future episodes on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. If you're a Scout who'd like to take leadership in Scouting or even in your future business career to the next level, be sure to check out MLT Leadership Academy this summer and Leadership Heights at the 2026 National Scout Jamboree. In the meantime, be sure to lead your own adventure.
She is my destiny, the only thing I ever really wanted to be.